Hi, I'm Cindy Martin. I'm a psychiatric nurse practitioner. And today I want to talk to you about grief. Most all of you, most everyone knows about the stages of grief. You've heard about it. But today I want to talk about how to get through those stages of grief. First of all, when people think of grief, the term grief, we think of death. Somebody has died. And actually, grief is a normal human process that anyone goes through when there's any loss of any kind. It is not a psychiatric illness, like when I treat depression or anxiety disorders. It's not something we're trying to treat. It's not something we're trying to get rid of. It is hardwired in our biology to help us adapt to loss. It can be a death, of course. That's what we're most familiar with. But it can be a loss of any kind. It can be a heartbreak when you have a broken heart. It can be when you lose a job, you get fired or let go, or even a favorite possession. Property, a house burns down, your backyard floods, you have great loss, and you have to go through the grieving process. We call it, psychologically, it's called the grief process. It's also called grief work, because you have to work through it. So because we call it a process, that means it has a beginning and an end. We're starting somewhere and we're trying to get somewhere. So we're not just trying to cry all our tears, but we're trying to get somewhere. The resolution of grief, we call it, in my field, I treat people that have unresolved grief. And that's why I'm making this video, because I want everyone to be able to resolve their grief. Resolving grief doesn't ever make the loss okay. We're not trying to be Pollyanna. We're not trying to this isn't the art of positive thinking. We're not trying to say, it's okay that my house burned down. It's okay that he broke my heart and left me. It's okay that this person died. No, it's not okay. Loss hurts. But the resolution of grief is when I adapt and I get to the point that I'm okay, even though it's not okay. Because the steps that you've all heard about, the stages of grief, and they're not really stages, they're all the feelings you feel, and we fluctuate between one and the other, are all have a purpose, a positive function. Biologically, we're hardwired to get angry when we're threatened, for instance. So, to review, for those of you that haven't heard about the steps or the stages of grief, that as it's written in a lot of literature, the things, and I don't call them stages because I don't think you go through them one at a time. It's not like first step, second step, third step. It's more, these are all of the feelings that people feel and experience when grieving a loss. Denial, which goes along with disbelief, shock, is the first thing that we experience. Anger, sadness, intellectual processing. And then for some people, and not in every grief and not in every loss, but a lot of us have to go through some guilt or self-blame if there's aspects of this loss that I feel responsible for. So that's the kinds of things we have to go through to adapt to get to I'm okay. So let me go through them just briefly one at a time. And let me show you how cool human brain is, because how it's helping you process, how it's helping you get through this. So the first thing that happens when you experience a loss is, no, this can't have happened. So the brain actually denies it for a while because it slows down the absorption of it. If I have to absorb it too fast, I'm going to implode. It's too much. It's an emotional flood. I can't handle it. So at first I go, no, this didn't really happen. And even if it's a death and it's very obvious, I can't deny, I still go through parts of me that my brain will say, I know he's gone, but I still expect him to walk up on my front porch. Or I still expect, or in a broken heart, I still think we're going to get back together again. Or I just lost my job. They're going to miss me. They're going to know what they're missing. They're going to call me back. I'm going to get this job back. Whatever. We go through a denial or a disbelief that we haven't really accepted. It's gone. The resolution of that is when my brain catches up and I'm able, my whole psyche and internal emotional system is ready to say, it's gone. Until then, there's a natural fight against that. Anger, I just said, anger is hardwired in any system, any mammal, when there's any threat of any kind. Now, there's no personal threat to my safety in grief, but there's a huge threat to my ego, to my sense of security, to my living without whatever I've just lost. So I get mad. There's always something to be mad about in a loss. So be mad. Any feeling in any part of grieving, it's mandatory that you feel the feelings. You can't stuff them. You can't ignore them. You can't avoid them. You can't numb them out with drugs or alcohol. That's why we call it grief work. You have to do the work. You have to go through it. That's what leads to the problematic grief that I have to treat when people come in with unresolved grief. Usually the person tried to somehow get rid of the pain, didn't want to feel it, didn't want to acknowledge what was really happening in their grief process. So anger. Get mad. But in this case, because it's not a real personal threat, there's nothing to fight. You know, a bear who's threatened, a mama bear who's threatened, and she rears up on her hind legs and she bares her teeth and she shows her claws because she's protecting her cubs, she's going to attack the predator. But in this case, there's nothing for me to attack. But get mad. Talk it out, scream it out, yell it out. Get mad like this. I am so mad that blankety blank. I'm so angry. I just can't stop being so angry that blankety blank blank blank. Just do that. The nice thing about anger is that we get mad and we get over it. Nobody stays mad. It's like throwing a log on a fire. It burns out and then it dies and it's done. So get mad and get over it. Now, next feeling is the one we all equate with grief. When we think of grief, especially in a death, we think of tears and sadness. We're terribly sad. We've got to be sad. And this is the hardest one to get over. And so people say, how am I ever going to get over this? It just hurts so much. And I have to encourage my patients to, first of all, cry it out, be sad. And it's going to feel at first like a flood. And this is why. Let me go back to why biology is working here. It's a normal process. We have to do this. It's just like the denial. That's why we flip around between the two. One minute I can't accept it, and the next minute I'm so mad, and then the next minute I'm crying. The thing about the sadness is the brain at first, the reason it's a flood is the brain at first is rapid fire telling me everything I'm going to miss too terribly about this loss of what I've lost. And this, I'm going to miss this. I can't live without this. What am I going to do without this? Bam, bam, bam. So it's striking me everything that I've just lost. And you have to cry about each one. And even if you're not a crier, let me speak to those stoic people in the world that don't cry tears easily. It doesn't have to be tears, but sad, you know what sad feels like. So be sad. You men that were taught from little boys not to cry out there, be sad. That sadness, I'm so sad. Feel the pit in your stomach when you think about I'm not going to have breakfast with this person anymore, or whatever it is that you're going to miss. Feel the pit in your stomach. Feel the tears that are trying to come, even if they're not real tears. That pressure within, that this hurts. Just feel it. Deep breath. Because that's what we do when we feel sad. Even after we've been crying, what's the first thing after I've been sobbing? The first thing we do, we take a deep breath and we breathe it out. We go, okay, I'm better now. So do that. Be sad about each and every little thing. Touch it, and then you'll cry as many times as you have to over each thing, and then it's done. Those specific tears dry up. And whether it takes days or weeks, you'll find that all of a sudden you're less sad. And life you feel a little lighter. You feel like you're moving on. But then, can be weeks, months later, something's going to hit you again that you haven't grieved. Christmas is going to come. And you're going to think about Christmas without this person, and oh no, another full flood of grief has to come. And I'm going to miss all of those things about sharing Christmas with this person. So don't put a time limit. You cannot put a time limit on your grief. It's going to come and go. But it's a process because it keeps getting easier and easier and easier. So maybe I think I've been living fully and I've recovered from my grief, and then a holiday comes. And bam, it hits me again. Don't tell yourself I shouldn't be still grieving. No, there's a new little bit you have to work through. So go ahead and do that and be with it. Now, the next thing we have to do in resolving our grief used to be called bargaining. I'm going to show you how old I am here. My first job as a nurse practitioner was in medicine in 1979. I was an oncology nurse practitioner for 7 years in a previous life, in many travels. That was a long time ago, before I changed and became a psychiatric nurse practitioner. But that was when Elisabeth Kubler-Ross had first written her book, and she's the one that she's the author of The Stages of Grief. And the stages of grief per Elisabeth Kubler-Ross were denial, anger, sadness, bargaining, guilt, and acceptance. Through the years, let me just briefly say what bargaining is. And there's a little part of that, but not in every loss. But bargaining is sometimes, dear God, if, when I just got this diagnosis of cancer, if you'll just find the cure for my cancer, I'll go to church every Sunday. Or bargaining is me reaching out to my lover that rejected me. If you'll come back to me, I'll do better. Or my previous boss. I make another ploy and try to come back to them and say, I'll work harder if you'll give me my job back, or whatever the loss is that we're facing. We bargain to see if we can get it back. I want to point out here that this is the reason I don't call it stages and steps, because you can see how they overlap. Bargaining is really a little bit of denial. If I'm bargaining to get my lover back or my job back or to get my cancer to go away, it's because I'm still in denial that it's not really, that what I've lost is not really gone. So they overlap. And bargaining is part of the intellectual processing. But the intellectual processing is much broader than that. It's everything we have to think about to make sense of it. We have to make sense of our loss. We have to go through all of the whys and the if onlys. We have to ask all the questions, replay the tape, and figure it out. How does it make sense to my brain? So there's two parts of this. There's two halves to this. There's the half of all the questions I'm going to ask when I replay the tape of what happened, and the answers I'm going to find. And the other half is the questions I'm going to ask to which there's no answers. And that happens. There's going to be a lot of unknown, unsolved mysteries that I'm going to have to let rest. So go ahead, do this work, ask your questions. But when you're doing this work, try to find the truth. Just look for the reasons behind what happened that you are given and deal with those. When you come up to the questions that you feel like that you can't find answers to, rest with, I'll never really know. And healing from this part, this process, especially the unanswered questions, is I'll never really know, but it doesn't make any difference because it's over. Again, it's a overlap of resolving my denial, that even though I don't really understand everything about this situation, we're moving. Remember the goal I said, we're moving towards I'm okay. It's okay. So the resolution of asking all my questions and giving up all that obsession is to get to the point of it is what it is. It happened and I'm okay. Now, the next thing a lot of us experience, and again, this experience is not for everybody, but for a lot of us, maybe most of us, there's always some self-doubt, some self-blame in what I've lost. If only I hadn't, whatever. Mainly because we as humans are also self-critical. We're also hard on ourselves. And if I've lost something and I know that I was partly responsible and I have to face those facts, I don't want to look at it. And when I do, at first, I implode. I want to blame myself for everything. And that's our tendency. We exaggerate the negative. So when you visit your own questioning of yourself and you visit your self-blame, accept the fact that you're human and we all make mistakes. And when you do the difficult part of seeing those mistakes, accept them as I'm human and I did the best I could. And the other thing about, in everything I deal with patients as a psychologist, is when we indulge in self-blame, we tend to lose sight of anything positive. Don't go there. Do not lose sight of all of your positive attributes. Do not lose sight of everything good that you had. Do not lose sight of everything good that you did. And drop this guilt. Drop it. I wish I hadn't. Okay, regret it. Don't hold on to that. We're human. Summing up, when you get to accepting your loss, it's, I know it happened. I was so mad at first. I'm still sad. I'll always be sad. But you know, my sadness now has turned to fond memories. Every time I get sad, when I fix my mother's favorite recipe and I use the same measuring cups that are in my cabinet, I say, "Hi, Mom. Oh, I miss you." And that's a concept I want to give you. This is pretty new in psychology as a therapeutic thing about handling grief. It's a concept called presencing. When I've lost somebody that has passed away, I haven't stopped loving them. The object of my love is gone, and the physical presence is gone, but my relationship is not gone because it's still coming. My love for this person and my attachment to this person is still emanating from me. So we have to figure out how to make that person present in my life now that the physical presence is gone. And the example I just gave of using my mother's recipe and using her measuring cups helps me. That's making her present in my life. That's a moment of yes, there's a sadness there, but it's bittersweet because the other half of sadness is love. I wouldn't be sad, my heart wouldn't be broken if I wasn't full of love. So that's the resolution of grief, is that I'm okay now. I've moved on. I'm living my life fully. Any self-blame I did, I'm done with. I did what I did. I'm human. I've set goals for improvement. I've learned from my mistakes, hopefully, if it's something in that realm. But if it's a death, I'm okay. I've moved on. I have a future. So it's changing from despair to hope. And again, like I said, it's not okay. I'm not trying to be Pollyanna. I'm not saying it's fine. I can't just give the platitude of, oh, you're better off without him, or he's in a better place. Even if our loved ones are in a better place, we're always going to wish they were here with us. So I hope for you in making this video that I also have a worksheet to go through, and you can read about it, about what I've just talked about here in this video. But my wish for you all is that you just see this as a process, that you don't shy away from it, and that you keep sight of getting to, I'm okay. Because that can happen from the first day. Just keep that mantra in your mind as you go through the grief process, as you cry your tears and deal with all of the trying to figure it out. Know that you are okay. Thanks for listening.